Yeah.
Louise, you're after me, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Cool.
Matt?
Yeah, Chad, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I only need
We got
30
attendees
seconds.
filing in. Excellent. Welcome, attendees. It's good to see everyone joining this event. Chad's queuing up his screen right now, and we'll get started. All right. Hello, and thank you, everyone, for joining this Traxo Office Hours Ask the Experts event on our travel programs. My name is Matt Griffin, and I am part of the product management team here at Traxo. And go on the next slide, Chad. So for those of you not too familiar with Traxo, we are the control center for corporate travel managers. We're on a mission to organize and unlock corporate travel data to empower travel managers and all those they support. Our focus is to turn every corporate travel program into a strategic asset by delivering complete booking visibility and control to travel managers. This Office Hours webinar is part of a series to help corporate travel managers down this path so they can turn their travel program into a strategic asset for their company. We're planning more events in this series with a variety of panelists so the corporate travel management community can hear different perspectives. These events are coming up in the next couple of weeks, so keep a lookout in your inbox for invitations. You can go to the next slide, please, Chad. We'll begin, as everyone is joining the event, we'll begin with a bit of housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded. Everyone should know that. You will, though, you will be able to view it again if you enjoyed it, or indeed share it with colleagues, friends, or anyone. And we encourage you, please do share this with anyone that you think would be interested in this topic. You have, as attendees, you have the facility to ask questions. So click on the Q&A feature of the webinar software, or there's also a chat feature, and you can type in your questions. Note that everyone can see discussion in the chat feature. So keep that in mind. And also questions in the Q&A feature are available and everyone can see those as well. You can even upvote a question if you see a question and you're interested in the same topic too. So just to kind of vote, please, I'm interested in that answer as well. After I pass the mic to Chad, I will be monitoring the Q&A and chat and periodically offer up questions to the panelists as we near throughout the event, as well as we near the end of the hour. As a reminder, on-topic questions are much more likely to get answered by the group. With that, thank you very much to everyone for joining. Thank you to our panelists, and I will pass the mic to Chad.
Thank you, Matt. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're well. My name is Chad Costa. I'm the Vice President of Sales for Traxo, and I'm going to be your moderator today. We have a great discussion planned. I'm very excited about this. There is a fantastic panel of 3 of the most innovative minds in the travel industry, and we're really excited to have them the ability to talk to you today. Over the next hour, we're going to dive into travel management in a post-COVID world. What will your new role look like? Insights on rebuilding your program and the value chain opportunities that exist, but also what to consider when recovering and restarting your program. So there's going to be a lot of takeaways and a lot of great knowledge passed to you today. But we want to hear from you. The second half of the webinar, we really want to be focused on Q&A from the audience. What's on your mind? The ability to ask the questions today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our 3 panelists. First, we have Shani DeSantis. Shani's a senior manager for the travel practice of PwC's advisory group, a recognized industry leader. Shani has more than 20 years experience in travel management, consulting, and procurement roles, specifically targeting Fortune 500 companies. Her expertise spans all travel categories with specific focus in program management, consolidation, strategy development and execution, process reengineering, and complex data and reporting strategies. Welcome, Shani. Susan Lichtenstein, the founder and managing partner of Digitravel Consulting. Digitravel is dedicated to simplifying T&E programs to enable digital and supplier direct connections between corporations and travel suppliers. Susan needs no introduction. She's got extensive background in travel meetings industry. She's held executive positions in both the corporate side, the supplier side, and is widely known to be a disruptor and an innovator. She was inducted into the BTN Hall of Fame in 2017. And last but definitely not least, Louise Miller. Louise is a managing partner with Eureka Consulting and has more than 30 years covering all aspects of the travel industry. Specifically, her 20 years at executive leadership at a global TMC. She also has airline, car rental, and years as a buyer in the aerospace and financial services industry. This gives Louise a tremendous perspective and insight to pass to you. So before we get going, I want to just talk a little bit about what we'll be covering. So we're going to start off with what's expected in your new role, move on to insights and rebuilding your program, and then recovery and restart. So I'm going to pass now to Susan Lichtenstein and tell you that I've never been so happy to mute myself as I will be today.
Thanks, Chad. Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday, I believe. I'm not sure anymore what day it is. But thanks for joining. I'm not sure about as much as a disruptor or troublemaker I am in the industry, but either one is happy for me, so I'm glad to do it. But welcome. I want to welcome everybody who's in the travel business to the executive floor, because you've all been promoted to run a brand new business inside your companies, whether you're on the buyer or the supplier side. No more management. We're actually going to build things. So let's talk about, first, let's start with what did we do before this coronavirus happened? What did we do before travel stopped? So travel has been disrupted. Travel has been interrupted. Travel has dealt with every kind of crisis in the world, but it's never stopped. And it has stopped. So now it's starting to ramp back up, and there's some pretty strong expectations coming your way. So we managed a lot of things as travel leaders, right? We manage relationships, both internal and external. Some people on this call will be managing in excess of, just millions of dollars for their companies, some hundreds of millions, some even in the billions. This has always been the third or second largest spend in a company. So you already have that experience in there, right? Monitoring, enforcing policies of preferred suppliers and static rates and dynamic rates, and really just spending a lot of time making sure you were getting things that you should have been guaranteed you were getting. Manage reporting inclusive of spend, volume trends, who's following policy, who's not following policy, all that stuff. Managing teams of multiple teams. You monitor training on expense and travel and card, continuing analysis to try to get better and better in that area. Then you had operating goals and plans, and you perform really closely with your stakeholders on the standard stuff, right? So consistently building that puzzle, looking for the next things. And one of the things you always did was have a lot of balls in the air at the same time. I know in my past role, I constantly had balls in the air. So, what was I doing this minute? What was I doing that minute? Really learning how to get more focused now on what's in front of me. So let's go to the next slide and see what the new role is of a travel leader, or what I'd like to call moving away from the travel business. Chad, can you move the slide? Thank you. And into the business of travel, because you are now promoted to the CEO of the business of travel inside your companies, whatever side you sit on. So right now you're actually going to be asked to model. And if you know anything about building plans, architecture, just even electrical planning, you model things. So you will be modeling and settling the company's culture now for a new duty of care, a culture that really consists of health, safety, some cases life or death. Your company is going to ask you to step your game up big time into a world that you may not have already known, to change behaviors and show their values around protecting their company. That's huge. That's like, whoa. So congratulations, you now have that great job. You're gonna set strategy and direction you've never set before, because it's not gonna be just for the business of travel, but other departments will follow you. You're gonna pull in HR, you're gonna pull in areas you haven't done before. You're gonna talk to travelers with conversations you haven't had before, and you're gonna start setting strategy and direction that's completely different and a much higher level than you used to. You're going to start allocating capital to the company's priorities. So what's going to travel first? Things that grow revenue, things that help their customers stay in business, things that are most important to the company. You are going to have a seat at that executive table, not just the VP level. You're going to step right on up almost to the C level, if not immediately up to the C level, to know where should they be spending their money to match their priorities, and you're going to have them to determine the best way to do that. You're going to lead and motivate teams in a different way now. You're going to develop very high performing teams with you to manage, and you're going to lead and motivate teams in different ways so that they stay safe, so they stay healthy. I mean, we weren't doing that before. So, you know, what an incredible opportunity to have these conversations. Most importantly, you're going to build trust. Right? It's no more, oh, I don't like this tool. I don't like this ticket. I love this tool. It doesn't matter. You're going to build trust in new ways that when a traveler gets on that plane, goes to that hotel, they are trusting you that you've done all the market research you can possibly get your hands on. You've done all of your homework. I'll plug my task force. You've joined the right task force. You've done all of, everybody on this call is on it. You've done all this great stuff to make sure that you've taken every possible move you can make that that person will be safe. Now, we can't guarantee they will, but at least if you've done your homework, at least if you pointed them in the right direction, when travel starts to ramp up, they're going to trust you. They're also going to trust you that you're giving that information to your leadership. And then you're going to make high quality investing decisions. So there's going to be new products coming on the market soon, guys. There's going to be to address the safety. There's going to be new products coming out to address speed to delivery. There's going to be all kinds of new things coming out. You're going to help the company address decisions about who should travel, why they should travel. What's the sales team thinking? What's the HR team thinking? What's the security and risk team thinking? And then am I giving them the best I can give them to make that happen for them? So a CEO, you know, people say all the time, and I study the behavior of CEOs sometimes because I like to be a better leader myself all the time. And the second reason is I always wonder, how does a CEO do it? How does a CEO of a Fortune 50, Fortune 100 company know when to turn those massive trucks? How do they do it? Even a mid-sized company, it's an enormous, I run a business in DigiTravel and I don't know sometimes how to do it. So how do people do that? And I'm finding out it's about focus on the things that are important, trust and empower your team, get as much information from as many places as you can possibly get, and learn. And I think that makes a great leader. And then maintain a deep knowledge, guys. Don't stop learning. CEOs never stop learning. You have been promoted. You are now the CEO of the business of travel. And I wish you guys the best of luck. Congratulations. Luis, you're up, my friend.
Great, thanks, Susan. So what we're finding at Eureka Consulting as we listen to customers, buyers, and suppliers in the marketplace is that, you know, managed travel's changed forever, and many believe that they have an opportunity to rebuild a different way, and suppliers see huge opportunity in changing the value chain as it relates to travel. The innovations that Susan just spoke about, it's our belief that there's going to be more innovation as a result of the pandemic, not less. And I think that's starting to be obvious. So let's talk about a few examples. One is basically, if you look at the managed travel process today, it's a pretty robust process. Over the years, certainly the many years that I've been involved, we've added so many great technology-based as well as personalized service-based add-ons to the travel value chain. You know, before 9/11, there was no real security tracking for travelers, very limited, if any, out there. You know, different things like disruption services in general, you know, companies that get involved and try to help travelers, and suppliers, airlines that help travelers. So when we look at the managed travel process, we're proud of it, but there are things that have been, you know, a bit innovative for many years that we've been afraid to try. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the conversation that I'm hearing between buyers and suppliers in the marketplace now. Next slide. So, you know, obviously there are a couple different popular scenarios out there of manage your program. You know, if you're a global organization, you know, a lot of times a global TMC is your anchor. It's your anchor supplier in managing your overall program from a service perspective and a spend perspective. And the TMC marketplace and competitive landscape has been very rich the past 10 years in particular. A lot of innovation coming out. Big effort by the TMCs to get the hotel bookings back into the managed channels. Lots of investment in particular on hotel. But in the end, there's also been a lot of innovation come, and a lot of programs have add-on suppliers that aren't just buying all the services from the TMC. So what are the pros and cons? So if you decide that the TMC is the platform that you build your program on, then many of the services you need can be purchased through that TMC, and that's great. And there's a lot of companies that do it that way, and it works very well. It's a proven model. Scenario 2 is the emerging model that we see happening all around the world, have for about the past 5 years. Certainly the past 2 years, add-on services have become more and more popular in markets outside the US. The first couple years, they tend to come from an anchor market like the US. But, companies that want to add on content sources, they want to add on different data providers, different service providers, like a Traxo, for example, obviously, who's hosting this, thank you. And so this isn't brand new anymore. It's pretty much, most of the companies that Arika works with are in scenario 2 now. So they rely on a global TMC, they appreciate global TMC, but they use a lot of third parties in their value chain. And it's working very well. Technology's come along far enough that just because you're using multiple suppliers doesn't mean your program's fragmented at all. So scenario 3 is probably the most controversial. And what we're seeing, more conversation and more examples of actual models in place now, is with a dramatic shift. Companies that aim to bypass the GDS, the TMC, and the traditional payment processes, for example, or companies that are just looking to build a process around one of those entities, for example. So travelers left corporate managed travel to book hotels on OTAs and direct 15 years ago. The attempt to get them back has resulted in 50 to 60% hotel adoption, and that's in a country that's successful. So it's a myth that our programs are not direct today. A lot of the hotel bookings already happen direct. The other issue is once the TMC issues that ticket, most of what the traveler is buying is direct. They're buying Wi-Fi, they're buying a better seat, they're buying an upgrade, they're buying all sorts of things en route. So in essence, it's a bit of a shame that NDC didn't happen faster, because now I think what's happening is supplier direct is almost more interesting than NDC to companies that have a relatively large spend. So what we see is a third scenario. And again, this isn't about right or wrong. It's just what we see in the marketplace at Arika with our lens. We see a third scenario where there's an open platform and the companies are working more closely with their suppliers direct, and they're building frameworks to connect the program into a managed program in a different way. And obviously Traxo is one of the companies that can be involved in that type of scenario. So I know it's a bit extreme, but this is becoming more of the conversation, and we're going to talk more about it in the next minute or two as well. Let's switch slides. So to just kind of make it very simple for everyone on the call, we have the TMC model on the left, which is, again, tried and true, proven model. It will be the predominant model for sure. But the issue is we have this demand building and enough examples that are up and running in different ways where the corporate kind of takes control over their value chain and reduces the amount of bookings through certain channels, increases the amount of bookings through other channels, using data aggregators and other providers to provide shopping services, provide reporting, provide duty of care, provide analytics for program operations. And what I mentioned on the last slide, the most common we see right now is kind of a combination of the two. So let's go to the next slide. Again, I can't really talk about something this unique without talking about what are the companies that are making these options viable today, not just in the future. And, you know, Eureka doesn't work for suppliers. We have no revenue from suppliers. So everything I say is based purely on buyer demand and research. But when you look at the pilot that ARC and BlockSky ran last summer with United Airlines, it was a very successful pilot. And there are examples of that same type of fulfillment with a direct connect in European markets that have been around 5 years. So it's not brand new. When you look at the need to potentially add a shopping layer on top of your process, even if it's a direct to supplier relationship, you have companies like Shep that provide really cool tools that do a myriad of things that can enable shopping. You have Kayak, you have Google Flights. So there are ways to shop before you book that don't really require an OBT necessarily. And then last but not least, you know, we need a way to organize the information of travel if we don't have a large chunk of our information within a TMC to be the primary reporting engine for you. So I guess this is your evidence that companies are out there making things work. There are consumer tools that help make the business process work. And there is a lot of investment continued. It's inevitable that blockchain and AI will transform travel and innovation, and it's not stalled. Okay, next slide. Great, Shani, it's your turn.
Thanks, Louise. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Shani DeSantis with PwC. I'm here to speak with you about recovery and restart with your travelers and employees in mind. And we cannot speak enough about the need for collaboration between buyers and suppliers as we look to restart travel. In the short term, PwC has spent a tremendous amount of time, our travel, transportation, and hospitality practice, researching across governmental bodies, industries, leveraging medical sources and periodicals to come up with a short, mid, and long-term outlook on the recovery of travel. And in the short term, there are a few things that we think we would have you think about as you're making your plans to restart and reemerge. So one thing is for certain, that uncertainty will continue. And as we've seen recently, the disease curve is going up and down, and we strongly believe that recovery will happen in waves. So that means you're going to need to constantly monitor and adapt the program and the plans that you have in place, thinking about medical regulations, government regulations, the voice of your customer, the voice of your supplier, and of course, supplier readiness as you look to put your travelers back on the road. There's also a new social contract between us as individuals where we will have to wear PPEs or something similar and respect social distancing guidelines, and figuring out how we can do that as we begin to gather a bit more socially. We can also be assured that in the near term that something will go wrong, and we have to be flexible and open to that, and then understanding the implications of if we reopen too quickly, what does that mean for our employees and their confidence as we try to bring this back online? So there are 6 key themes across all of this research that we've identified that we've been speaking with both buyers and suppliers about. And the first is really about the engagement of some medical advice or epidemiologists to help guide the decisions. That could also be through your corporate security or HR or other teams that you have, but it's very important that you have those types of resources to ensure that your program is in compliance with regulations, both medical and governmental. In the absence of a single point of truth, and with so many people providing advice on how to move forward, we're seeing that the private sector has taken a very interesting role in being a leader in creating policies and procedures that will benefit, and you should feel comfortable doing so. We do see that essential businesses are adapting to the new way of doing business and are very agile, and that is something that you'll need to be thinking about as well. As Susan and Louise mentioned, how can you do more with less? How do you have the right technologies and partners in place to help you adapt very quickly? You also need to be thinking about how employees are working now. And with the increase in virtual work situations, how will you begin to communicate these changes in your policy and procedures to your employees and also to your suppliers so that they can plan accordingly? You may need to engage some folks from your procurement or IT areas to work collaboratively to understand how you can get the right information to your travelers very quickly. That ties in very well with the tech enablement relative to safety. And that's also about opening a feedback loop so that your travelers can communicate their fears with you and so that you can understand what you need to be doing to increase their confidence to get them back on the road. And then finally, again, in collaboration with your suppliers, understanding the supply chain and how their supply chain may be disrupted, the ability to get things like PPEs, disinfection and sanitation materials, and how that will affect their ability to open up so that you can get back on the road. Chad, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. So we've come up with 4 areas and some questions. These questions, of course, are not exhaustive, but really are around some areas that we believe matter most. So safety in particular, having a duty of care program is simply table stakes at this point. You need to assess if your program is efficient. Is it addressing all of your areas from a geographical perspective? And also, were there gaps that you identified at the beginning of the pandemic that need to be closed for future points of reference? Evaluating your travel policy. Does it align with the corporate culture going forward? Will you need to look for savings opportunities? Will you need to do some supplier rationalization? Those are the types of questions that you should be asking yourself relative to the policy right now. It may not be all about cost, but cost is a very, very important thing to consider as we move forward. So you will also need to understand how you can quickly mobilize to understand what your suppliers need from you as you begin to travel again. Do they expect a cost increase? Will they expect cost to be flat so that you can be the CEO of your travel business within your company? And then finally, understanding the recovery pattern. So you have a tremendous amount of assets right now, cancellation penalties that will need to be managed. Do your suppliers have a plan to bring their employees back to work on the same timeline that you will need? If not, what are your contingency plans? It will be super important to ask yourself these and many other questions over the next few months as you begin to look forward. So Chad, if we could move forward. So in the midterm, what should you be doing? So the next 6 to 9 months timeline horizon is really 3 things that deal with evaluating and creating procedures, working with your suppliers to understand what their safety and sanitation procedures are, and if you can assist them in the creation of their procedures in any way. You're also going to need to work collaboratively to create new policies, and that's going to be for T&E, travel, understanding your suppliers' policies, and making sure that your travelers will be comfortable with those that you put in place. And then finally, evaluating technology and then enabling that. Understanding how you can increase remote engagement, what tools are available in the market for you to implement change management very quickly, and also, as I mentioned, create that feedback loop so that you understand the challenges that your travelers are anticipating as they move forward. So in the long term, PwC is recommending that buyers and suppliers make some targeted investments in 4 areas to ensure the survival, agility, and resilience of your travel programs. So if we look on the lower left, we'll see that there are a number of different recovery curves that could happen with the economy that will influence the recovery time. So those are things you'll need to monitor. But these 4 areas really will help you will help you as you move forward. So first and foremost, we all need to be flexible. I don't think there's a single book or a single way that the economy or travel is going to come back, but we need to be working with our partners across the globe in our travel program and our suppliers to really understand what those challenges may be so that we can try to roll out a very consistent recovery program with our employees in mind. We are also going to need to do more with less, and that's going to really test your agility and your ability to manage your business, to motivate your staff, to motivate your suppliers, to improve your partnerships and collaboration, and have very transparent and sometimes difficult discussions. Finally, we all need to be prepared to re-embrace safety as a brand promise and a brand standard. So we need to think about no longer having duty of care. It's really about a culture of care. And so with culture of care at PwC, what we're thinking about is it's not just enough to have safety and security procedures. It's about ensuring that our travelers, that your travelers maximize their convenience, minimize stress on the road, and can be comfortable and productive while they're out conducting business. So in the next 12 to 18 months, these are where the focus and the collaboration should exist in order to have your employees at top of mind as you begin to restart. Chad, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Shani, Louise, and Susan. Thank you. Great stuff. We really appreciate that. Matt, I want to start to look at the Q&A and maybe start to give the panelists some time to address some of the questions from the audience.
Definitely. Yeah, so attendees, you've been asking some questions. Thank you for doing that. Please do continue to ask questions, and we will get those answered here from our panelists. Let's begin, though, with Louise. So Louise, this is a question that came in prior to the event. You mentioned that companies are out there making things work. And you gave a few examples of companies that are kind of making things work. And an attendee was wondering, have you heard of any companies tracking the reopening status across multiple countries and using that to inform who they allow to travel in the world? So for example, a US-based employee can only travel within the US potentially, or travelers in other countries might only be permitted to travel within their country. And if yes, you hear this is being done, how is it done efficiently? And what resources have you heard out there that you would recommend as both authoritative and ideally open or free?
Yeah, great. So as you can imagine, the Eureka team spends many hours a week on research. I'd say two of my favorites of the week. One is there's a BCG live Tableau report where you can find all the stats in one place. And it's on the web. If you just put it into a Google search, it'll pop right up and it's open to the public. It's multiple tabs. It's a mashup of great information. And obviously when it's put out by a professional services firm, you know they're not trying to sell an airline seat. The second thing that I saw, I think it was last week, Amex GBT put out an extraordinarily detailed and robust set of documents that detail all of the things you just asked about. Now, of course, it's difficult because those things become dated very quickly and the downline sources are noted in there. So I think those are two of the best I've seen in terms of recent and thorough.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So this one is for Shani. Shani, so you stated, this is from an attendee, you stated, you talked about proven disinfection technology and procedures. And an attendee is wondering, how are you judging that? And what are you hearing from other vendors as far as what is the best-in-class procedures? It seems to be kind of a subjective thing, and just kind of wondering how are you navigating that at PwC as far as backing that up to be proven procedures and techniques for disinfection?
Awesome, thanks. That's a great question. A group of professionals who were former airline employees actually have created a brand new cleaning and disinfection practice and some standards leveraging a number of different technologies and chemicals, and are going to be publishing a perspective about this coming up. We've also been in a number of conversations with people in the supply community, hotels in particular, and Marriott and Hyatt have both come out with clean councils. Air Canada has come up with a Clean Care Plus, that is a tongue twister, program, as well as Delta Clean. So we're looking at what other suppliers are already doing in the marketplace. What we also know about safety and disinfection, and we have come up with a perspective. There's no one right answer, and I think this will also evolve over time. But what we're also seeing is some other hotel chains that are working with the international hotel chains that are working with local health ministries to create either a clean mark or some type of sanitation guidelines that they will be reporting back. And so they also may differ by country. If we have the link to the perspective, I'll be happy to give it to Chad to send out with the recap of this meeting. But I would certainly, as Louise mentioned, do some research on some of the reopening guidelines and these sanitation committees that are being launched by some of the very large hotel chains.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. And any relevant links for attendees, we will have a blog post after this event, after we compile more of the Q&A, and we'll include links to valuable resources like that, as well as resources that Louise mentioned. So thanks everyone for continuing to ask questions in the Q&A. That's awesome. We also love seeing other attendees answer questions from other attendees in the chat. So please, that's great for the community. Thank you for doing that. We've got some questions around tracking employees and effective ways for doing that, but also questions around data privacy. And you know, this is a pandemic, and are there any kind of views or evolving views, perhaps, on privacy in the need the need of visibility that come into how do you deal with a pandemic? Can any of the panelists kind of address that as far as how your organizations might be, or your customers might be viewing traveler privacy evolving or maybe changing a little bit in different perspectives?
Yeah, hi, this is Sue. So this does come up quite a bit with our customers and in just general discussions of how willing are we to lessen our privacy requirements so that our employees are safe, so that the travelers are safe every day. Because in order to be able to assert that safety, and make sure that people are doing well, it's really a matter of what kind of information are we willing to give away, or that our travelers are willing to give away to make sure their health remains, safe and secure if they do go onto the road. And that's a great conversation coming up. I mean, I've had some great conversations with the GRASS team and other teams and about, what's happening here, right? What are travelers asking for? It's certainly a discussion that needs to continue to happen, but I do truly believe from what I'm hearing, people are going to be willing to lower those data privacy needs during this process until a vaccine or medication is found in order to enable that safety for their traveler. It's similar to the conversation we just had around direct bookings to hotels, or how are we going to know people are safe? That's going to be a ratings process, right? I mean, how else are you going to do that? So how close to that rating are you going to be able to do? Are you going to be able to do it as you're checking in? Are you going to be able to do it at the point of sale? Are you got, new technologies, I think, Louise, you mentioned, are going to come out. And then what are we going to feed these technologies to enable that to come to our smartphones, our watches, whatever it is that you need to make sure that they have, and I mentioned this in Becoming a CEO presentation, to make sure that everybody has all the information they need to make the right choices. And that, in terms of making that happen safely, you're going to have to change your privacy rules a bit.
This is Louise. I just want to add something to Susan's comments. I don't believe that we're going to have to give up quite as much personal information, mainly because of technology. So let me give you an example. You have the WHO, World Health Organization, you have the Center for Disease Control, and you have company X, it doesn't matter, you know, all those bodies, they each select their own blockchain providers. And so someone was telling me about a new product from Microsoft that is overlay across multiple blockchain setups that each contain private information. And so there can be a rating shared back to the central body asking if you're okay to travel without actually sharing your personal information. So think of TSA pre-check, and you just have a check on your boarding pass. And how you get to that check is largely done in a way that protects your data privacy. And blockchain is one of the biggest ways that we can protect information, but still share it across, share certain things across platforms. So I think it's coming now. It's not going to be something we're going to have to wait long for.
Gotcha. Excellent.
And I'll
Thank
just
you.
add, I think many companies that are pursuing products with respect to ACT or some other products that just check on employee safety, PwC is actually launching a suite of products in that area, are opt-in. So your employer is certainly strongly encouraging you to participate for the reasons that Susan and Louise have mentioned. However, ultimately, it is up to the individual to decide to opt in and participate or not.
Agreed.
Gotcha. Okay. So one might kind of look at what's been happening over the last few months with corporate travel, and from a travel management standpoint, I think many people have been kind of caught on their heels trying to kind of react as things are just kind of evolving very quickly. But maybe kind of looking back, do y'all expect that provisions and policies that have been put in place specifically for COVID-19 will become more part of the regular T&E policy? So for the continuation of this event, but also for the next, another event, whether it's on the scale of COVID-19 or something that might be more localized, like the wildfires in Australia earlier this year. Do y'all see these things becoming more ingrained in T&E policy for organizations? These actions that companies are taking?
Yeah, so I'll start. You know, you have to now determine what's policies are funny things, right? So we use policies in the past to say, don't do this, don't do it, or book 14 days in advance, or things like that. What's happening now is a fluid, flexible crisis management program, right? That we haven't seen yet, you know, where everything came to a start, but I know, and talking to customers and working with people, and somebody said it earlier, Louise, where you spend a lot of time researching and learning now, you know, this is a priority now to create a plan. I'm not sure it's a policy, but a plan to create for managing the behaviors of people when something like this happens. So yes, this is going to happen again, right? We know that. And once a cure and a vaccine comes up, and not a cure, but a medication and vaccine, it'll go into the flu category. Like that's how all the other flus happen. That's how all the viruses happen if we look at the history. But this isn't about the flu or the virus. This is about how can we make sure if something like this happens again, we are prepared by learning from what we did or learning from what we know. And so that learning capability is so important. And I think these plans have to include the ability for everybody in the company to continually learn and be updated. And it has to be fluid. It can't be these set pieces of paper anymore that say, no, do this and do that. It really, I think this has taught us nothing else to say, we have to be fluid. So if it makes sense to go this way and do it a certain way that we've never done before, great. And if you can prove that path out where in this situation, that's what it means, let's get fluid, let's get flexible, because the main point is how do we keep our employees safe and how do we keep each other safe and still be able to communicate and do our businesses. So I think there's a lot of fluid, flexible planning going on that a policy will drive them to learn more every day. That's what I think.
Excellent, great, thank you. So let's switch a little bit and talk about relationships with suppliers. And there were some questions around, do you see things like advanced purchase policies from airlines maybe going away, or changes to requirements there or preferences there, when kind of historical pricing information now is getting pretty out of whack, maybe it's not as dependable, or your concerns about employee experience, things like that. And yeah, if you think that how you think relationships with suppliers will be changing as a result of going through this COVID-19 experience.
So this is Shani. I'll jump in on this. I've always said that past behavior was not indicative of future travel needs. And I think now more than ever, that's 100% true. I think the challenge going forward right now is, hotel RFPs are always done every single year. Hospitality companies don't have the resources to do that. We've always done RFPs every 2 to 3 years for air. We don't have resources to do that. But besides that, we also don't have any idea of what the new cost of service is going to be. So are the airlines going to be able to provide service at the same cost that they did prior? Probably not likely with new safety and sanitation needs. The cost to service a room at a hotel is probably going to go up exponentially. I just don't think we have enough information at this point, which is why PwC has been stressing that the need to collaborate between the buyers and suppliers is so great. We have to understand what the challenges are on each side and how we can help each other and lift each other up. I also don't know that the choice and variety of hotels that we have today will be available in the next 3, 4 to 6 months. So the hotels that you used to use may or may not reopen, or may not reopen to a capacity that can service all your needs. Again, I think collaboration is key. I see Louise and Susan nodding their heads, so I'll turn it over to you ladies. I'm sure you have a perspective as well.
Yeah, I think for me, I think bedded together, right? You know me, that's me, bedded together. I think it's just so critical right now. But I think it's also an opportunity, Louise, you brought it up earlier. What an opportunity for us to change the way we've been doing things over and over again. I mean, I changed it, 7 years ago with this RFP process, but what a great opportunity to sit down with your suppliers and say, you know what, why are we doing this every year? What's happening here? Well, how can we do this better? What about a blockchain? I don't know. What about it? What about a smart contract? What about a new relationship? What about a dynamic relationship? What would happen if I book direct? How would I get that data back? Would it make sense? How do I get the most content? How do I get the most safety regulations? Like, whoa, have a conversation. Like, just think like you're the CEO. I don't have a travel program. How would you build it exactly today? Because I'm telling you that if you put a millennial in the room, or even Generation Z in the room on a chair and said, would you build it this way? They would be like, whoa, no. So take advantage, right? These two brilliant women on the call with me are 100% right. Take advantage of this time. I'll give it to you, Louise.
This is one of the most important questions being asked on the call. And there's some good news. One piece of good news on the hotel side is that both the direct consumer channels, OTAs, and TMCs all have extremely robust hotel content platforms at this point. And largely they connect to the OBTs. So we have a very robust engine. Honestly, what Areca was seeing is that most of our customers weren't even using their corporate rate more than 50% of the time. So, if you have hotels near your headquarters or near a big customer, or you just have, a lot of volume in a certain place, that's fine. But we were seeing the number of hotels that are booked at the corporate rate erode dramatically over the past 4 years. So really, we just need to be less attached to our preferred rates, and we need to shop like consumers. And my second point is follow the consumers. Look and see what consumers are doing. Look for research on consumers. What the consumers accept and do is almost always transferred into corporate travel.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for a thorough response there. That's great. Along these lines, there was a question in the chat around direct bookings, and the two-parter here. So Regarding direct bookings, how do you see negotiated rates fitting into that in the future? Or kind of the overall organization's approach to their travel policy? And then second, given like a major messaging shift to away from only booking through your program online booking tool, what do you recommend for companies that are not really ready or willing to embrace open booking 100%? Are there any kind of is there any advice that you would give an organization that's interested but it's not ready to completely dive into it?
Yeah, this is Louise. I'll make a few quick comments. First of all, when you look at hotel, as long as you have your corporate discount number in your profile, you can book a hotel at the corporate rate direct on the .com site now. So that's easy, relatively easy. The airlines allow for corporate discounts to be accessible in corporate portals. Each one does it a little differently. Some have a special corporate portal login. Some you just go onto the .com site and it's a little easier to get through. But you can get your corporate deals in supplier direct channels for sure. Some are better than others. Some are doing it a lot now, and some are still almost just talking about it. But then I think the second point is that once you have your corporate rates, you do have to think about policy. So some of my clients are saying, okay, are people really looking at the lowest logical airfare? Or are they just being fed that display and they're picking airline X anyway? So airlines are pretty competitive in most routes unless there's a big gap in service, which could happen even more now. So it's a little bit of a myth, according to some of my clients, that lowest logical airfare is as powerful as everyone thinks it is. And you know, if I'm with Supplier X and I'm a top tier road warrior with preferred status, I'm going to do a quick check, maybe on Google Flights or Kayak, to see if all the prices are around the same. And then I'm just going to go onto the website and book. That's what I'm going to do. That being said, if I have a complex trip or some other factors come into play, I'm going to rely on a TMC for sure. So I do think there's those things. And the last point, what do you recommend for companies who aren't ready to make that move? You're already doing it. So what I recommend is to analyze what you're already doing. And before you would try to change, you know, a policy, think about why your program, why people book off channel now. Well, one, a lot of the airline ancillaries aren't available through TMC. It's a big reason. So think about why the behaviors are happening in your program today, and that will help lead you to, you know, what are you really ready for next? And I'm big on experiments. Most of my customers are big on experiments. Conduct a few experiments. You'll see what you learn.
Yeah, I mean, this is right up my, I can't ever talk enough about this, but, you know, really, truly, I mean, before crisis, after crisis, you know, you got to look inside your own program like you've never seen it before, right? You got to sometimes bring in an outside view because we get so attached. I was so attached. I mean, I had to go to a 12-step program just to get over how I was building my program because I couldn't get out of that insane cycle. I had to get help. So, you know, and now, you know, we're in a world where it's not an either or thing anymore, right? It's a plus, right? There's a need for people to call an agent. There's a need for people to use a tool. And there's a great deal of people out there that know, actually 72% of the travelers know what flight they're going to take, what airline they're going to book, what hotel they want to stay in. And they know exactly how to get there. If, as a travel leader in my last role, my concern was data. How do I know where they are? Well, this crisis has told us one thing. You don't know where they are. 40% of the time, you don't know where they are. So now this crisis has really enabled us to say, how do we get the data we need to determine where they are so I can not control it so much, but guide in the plan that's going to keep them well, right? The traveler well-being. It used to be called the travel experience. I call it the traveler well-being now. How do I determine that traveler well-being? 40% of people are booking their hosts directly. More people can do that now because hotels can't afford to build systems and give them to tools. They're going to build systems that show their ratings of cleanliness in their systems. Right. And you're going to have to go see that anyway. So how do you get, the airlines are going to do the same. They can't afford it otherwise. And we want to get in a plane without tripling the cost of our tickets. We're going to have to make concessions. So I'm going to plug Traxo because I have said this way before I did the session. Love the company because the simplicity of that, and you mentioned Shep, and there's a great deal of people out there working on this. The simplicity of this today is everybody can get a corporate rate or better. Everybody can put a local profile in. Companies are starting to build global profiles that you take with you wherever you go, which, God bless, I will be the first person on the block to pat the back of that company that rolls that out. And new technologies are going to come up. It's not an either or thing. Your hub cities can go direct. It's not an either or thing. It's a what's good to add to my program so I have a full program that allows all the channels of bookings. And then I can let my travelers decide. And you can let the travelers decide and you'll see, woo, look at this, 30% here, 20% here. Imagine running a program based on people behaving. Oh my God, what a group. And then go back to those data companies and go, I want to measure behavior right now, every day, every way. And I'm getting all my data back on everything I do. Oh my God, that's like beyond my wildest dreams. That's the perfect travel program. And there are people on this call, including the Travel Manager of the Year from last year, who have done this successfully. So it is here. Everybody can add a channel, whatever channel that is to their program. It's 2020. And we have plenty of time now. So let's get going.
Well, thank you all so much for your answers. I'm sure it's really helpful for the audience. We have some other questions, and unfortunately, we are running out of time. We will post answers to any questions we didn't cover that are either in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll post those in our blog post probably early next week. So we'll get to it. Just leave a note in the Q&A or the chat right now, and if you have another question. I'm going to hand it over to Chad to wrap up. And then we'll just do some kind of closing remarks. So Chad.
Thanks, Matt. So there was a lot of great insight, great questions and answers. And I think the one thing that was sure is that travel is changing. We're all going to have to adapt and change with it. I want to thank Susan, Louise, Shani, very much for taking time out of your day to share this with us. So thank you so much on behalf of Traxo. Matt, I'm going to let you finalize the housekeeping and yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah. So as Chad said, thank you to our panelists, Susan, Shani, and Louise. We really appreciate your time and your insights. Really, really helpful. And also thank you to our attendees. Great conversation, great discussion in the Q&A and the chat. Thank you for helping each other. There's a lot of that going on these days. We really hope this event has given you some ideas for how to turn your corporate travel program into a strategic asset for your company. So please visit our blog at blog.traxo.com for a link to the replay of this event. We'll add the presentation, and then also check for the next office hours event coming up in your inbox. We have some more advice on this topic on how companies are working through this pandemic on our blog. So we posted on May 6th an article called Full Data Visibility, the new table stakes for corporate travel. It's got a link to a very, very helpful PDF that I've got the quick link here, info.traxo.com/4stages. And this is the result of us talking to various companies around how are they tackling the COVID-19 pandemic at their organizations and in a phased approach. So please do check out that PDF. We think you'll find it helpful, and you can get it again at info.traxo.com/4stages. Thank you again, everyone. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to meeting you with you again in the future. Stay safe, and also we hope we get to see all of you in person soon at an industry event. So everyone, have a great day. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.